Pastor Steve Waldron, New Life Church, Albany, Georgia here. Today, for the book review, The Black Book of Communism, Crimes, Terror, Repression, by French editor Stéphane Corté. Has several contributors here. And really, I'm going to read to you off the back from Tony Judt from the New York Times, and it kind of gives a brief synopsis of this book. It says, an 800-page compendium of the crimes of communist regimes worldwide, recorded and analyzed in ghastly detail by a team of scholars. The facts and figures, some of them well known, others newly confirmed, and hitherto inaccessible archives are irrefutable. Now this is a very important point. The myth of the well-intentioned founders, the good Tsar Lenin betrayed by his evil heirs, has been laid to rest for good. No one will any longer be able to claim ignorance or uncertainty about the criminal nature of communism, and those who have begun to forget will be forced to remember anew. Now, I'm wrestling with a little bit of Bell's palsy here. We're going to go into this. This is a great book. Here, he estimates somewhere about 90 to 100 million people in the 20th century were killed by communism. Communism, in the modern day iteration of it, came to pass during the French Revolution, kind of the communist understanding of things. Lafayette, I think, was the first recorded instance of using the term communism at that point. I was reading history one time, and Ulrich Zwingli had imprisoned Balthasar Hubmaier, and one of the crimes he had imprisoned him for is he said he's a communist. Now, I've read some other things from like the 16th century about communism, but it doesn't seem like in this instance. The term communist has some very definitive doctrinal understandings. First of all, it's secular and atheistic, it's humanistic. It believes in the abolition of private property. It believes in the abolition of the family. It believes in the community of women. Compulsory secular education for everyone. It's, 10 planks of communism. And also, it is totalitarian. Now, what would be the difference between communism and socialism is basically socialism is communism with a velvet glove. It is, you had like the Fabian socialists, Bertrand Russell and Sidney and Beatrice Webb, and they wanted to, in their stained glass at commemorating Fabian socialism. It's literally a wolf in sheep's clothing. They promised the masses money, but the money has to come from somewhere. And it comes from other citizens. It's organized thievery, as Frederick Bastiat would say, and it is then put into the hands of other people. Marx's famous statement, from each, according to their ability, to each, according to their need. But who determines how much comes from and who gets the to? Normally, such is the case, such as in the Soviet Union, the officials are going to dachas while people are standing in line for bread. As Orwell said in Animal Farm, some animals are more equal than other animals. So communism is a horrible thing. It has some satanic elements to it. Of course, Karl Marx, Richard Wurmbrand, who was tortured for his faith behind the Iron Curtain, wrote that book, Tortured for Christ is his most popular book. He also wrote one called Marx and Satan, and tells about just really the satanic nature of communism. So this goes into communism. It really picks up where Billington's book, Fire in the Minds of Men, leaves off, starting in 1917, and even before that, the communists trying to assassinate the czars and this type of thing, and the horrible revolution in Russia. Winston Churchill wrote about it, about Spartacus Weizsäcker, has the Russian people by the hair of the head through this horrible thing, communism. It's just an awful thing. So in communism, when it was first instituted, they murdered, they had a war of oppression and repression against what were known as the white armies, backed by Britain and the United States and others, killed them, and then killed 4 or 5 million people, wanted to kill what was known as the kulaks, which would have been like the landed peasantry, exterminated them, tried to as a class. Then when it went to Ukraine, the Holodomor, estimated 6 million people died of starvation that was orchestrated by Stalin. This was not just because of bad crops. This is because they were of the crop. They were stealing the farm. They were stealing the seed. They were stealing the crops to sell or to keep the Soviet intelligentsia going. The infamous NKVD, so horrific, so awful. The tortures that they did, the social experimentation, really going after the works of Pavlov to see if they could make people, as Orwell said, love their slavery. So Russia, minimum tens of millions of people died at the hands of communism. And then after World War II, you had China falling in the hands of communists. And again, Mao Zedong, the Great Leap Forward, other things, killed a minimum of 60 million people. Some people estimate 120 million people. No freedom of religion. Don't believe the lies of the communists and the socialists. There's no such thing as a free lunch. We need to pray, believe on the goodness of God, believe benevolence of good Christian people to help people. So this is in North Korea, the horrific atrocities against Christianity. In North Korea, North Vietnam, Cambodia, Phnom Penh, the killing fields, the Khmer Rouge there. Communism is a destroyer. Cuba, still, before President Obama just went, one of the hidden stories is they locked up 468 dissidents. Just a horrible thing. I was just reading in communist China where one of the Christian leaders' wives that was protesting against them destroying their church building was buried alive and killed. And so terrible things happen under communism, and it's nothing the United States wants any part of. It doesn't matter what your well-meaning liberal professors at college tell you. It is a bad thing. It is a horrible thing. This is a great book that documents in intimate detail. Once the Soviet Union fell in 91, the KGB archives were open for a brief time, and scholars went in and saw the incredible carnage of communism. You know it's bad when you've got the New York Times, who actually covered up, or at least one of their prominent reporters covered up for communism in the 1930s and tried to report that the Ukrainian Holodomor was not occurring and that type thing. When they're saying, now we know communism was awful. When the New York Times is saying that, as liberal as they are, you know it's awful. People say, well, they have free health care. Yeah, it's a race to the bottom. Free health care, no health care. My uncle is from Cuba, and he is currently a missionary to Cuba. I will not give his name. But once he was allowed to go back a few years ago and visit his mother, he said the devastation upon Cuba, which had a thriving middle class in the 50s, was destitute. Children were going blind because of the lack of vitamins. They're still driving the cars they drove in the 50s because people can't afford to get other cars. I've heard when you go to Havana, most of Havana is still a time warp. So, but yet the Castros are worth so much money. And so it's really an economic theory of enslavement. It is not freedom. Now, people say, well, I hate capitalism, blah, blah, blah. I understand all of that. Till Jesus comes, there's not going to be a perfect form of human government. The Israelites tried and failed. Great Britain tried, and you see where they are. The United States had this experiment in liberty, and as John Adams said, that it's based on the gospel of Jesus Christ, and so many of our Constitution based on the Bible and the gospel, and it's for a Christian people because moral people and law of history are very hard to subjugate. And so capitalism, because of humanity, is going to have flaws in it, and there is going to be injustice, and there's going to be inequality. But there's going to be that in communism as well, only far worse. When the First Amendment falls to the Bill of Rights, these are restating natural rights that all men have everywhere. They're given to us by our God, by our Creator, not by government, not by man. And so we believe in Christian capitalism, for lack of a better term. We won't expound on all of that. Communism, the Black Book of Communism, great book. I want to encourage you and implore you, don't go into communism. There's great blessings. I was reading a Christian author not long ago, and he was saying that even atheists should be for Christian society because it produces a good society, a moral society, a just society with far a man's handshake, and their word is their bond. You can leave your doors unlocked because of the lack of crime instead of the evolutionary metaphysic, which communism and evolution go hand in hand. You know, Marx wanted to dedicate the origin of the species. He wanted to dedicate Das Kapital and have the origin of the species as a corollary book. Say this is an economic theory that goes along with our philosophical theory and our economic theory, and this is a scientific theory that goes along with the economic theory of communism. And but he didn't, because he didn't want to hurt the origin of the species by associating it with communism. Communism, according to Karl Marx, started out as a secret society. And he talks about, even in the Communist Manifesto, I've read the Communist Manifesto many times, and how it's so shocking, the abolition of the family, the community of women, these type things. So there's certain cultural Marxism that's going on today, that a Marxist culture will lead to a Marxist economic system, whereas a Christian culture will lead to a Christian society that has the blessings of liberty. You remember in the 1830s when there was a French historian who came to the United States of America, and he said, I looked for the greatness of America. And he said, you know, I looked at its copious harbors, I looked at its industry, because, you know, it was founded basically in 1789, full-fledged after the Constitution. And by the 1830s, it was already the most prosperous country the world had ever known. And he said, so I looked for the prosperity of America and all of its natural resources. But then he said, I went into the churches of America. And he said, America is great because America is good. He said, I heard the pulpits thunder with righteousness. He said, if America ever ceases to be good, America will cease to be great. So cultural, social theory goes along with economic theory, which goes into theories of government, which goes into theories of oppression. And think about it. It was leaders of governments who killed these tens of millions of people, who outlaw Christianity, will not give freedom of expression. And so we have to be, that's the reason the Constitution, you know, Thomas Jefferson put chains on people, chains on the government. So we would have a limited form of government, and being a moral people, we would have self-government, internal government, so to speak. So God bless you. This book, excellent book. I do recommend it. Talk with you later.